Hi guys, welcome to the Wrestling Retrospective, and in today's episode of Main Event Memories, I'm going to be going back and doing my review of AEW All Out 2022. So kicking off the night, we had the Casino Gauntlet ladder match, the Casino ladder match. I feel like there's something else they called it, but you know what I mean, Casino Gauntlet, where it was won by the Joker. He defeated Roosh, Andrade, Wheeler Yuta, Claudio Castagnoli, Penta, Rey Fenix, and Dante Martin. Obviously, the Joker, I mean, at this point, if it's a spoiler, then fair enough, but the Joker will go on to be MJF, that would be revealed at the end of the night after the main event. But this was like a very interesting match. The picks that were made to be in this one are like very intriguing because there was essentially three tag teams in LFI, the Lucha Bros, and the Blackpool Combat Club. And it was kind of short for a ladder match. Andrade got his signature like powerbomb into a ladder spot in, which he always likes to do. Penta did like the first Mexican Destroyer, and it was awesome, and then Andrade ate that as well. So like Andrade really put himself through the ringer in this match. Then like a group of men attacked everybody. Like there really wasn't a lot of highlights. It was a very average ladder match. You know, it was very run of the mill, very Ron Seal. You know, they said the highlights were probably Andrade's powerbomb and Penta's Mexican Destroyer. But as a group of men, and if you don't remember, they were once called The Firm, and it is Stokely Hathaway, Ethan Page, The Guns, Lee Moriarty, and Big Bill. They pretty much went around and took out everybody around ringside, so there was no one left just before the Joker came out. Stokely went up and grabbed the massive poker chip that they put up on top of that they had like hanging from the ceiling during a casino ladder match. The Joker came out. They came out to Symphony to the Devil by The Who, I believe. I don't know. The version I listen to fairly often is the Guns N' Roses version, so you have to forgive me if I've forgotten who originally did it. I know that the Guns N' Roses one is a cover, so don't worry. But yeah, it was like a very intriguing way to start the show. Stokely Hathaway just handed the chip to the Joker, and then he went to unmask and then said he wasn't going to do it, and then they all just walked out together, and that was it. The Firm just didn't work out at all. They lasted a few weeks, maybe even a month at tops, and then they all went their separate ways. But yeah, this, like, as a ladder match and as a way to start a pay-per-view, was booked very well. Okay, the ladder match wasn't great, but everyone was talking about it afterwards. Everyone was trying to work out who the Joker was. People had, looking back at it now, like, the Joker has MJF mannerisms to it, so it kind of is obvious now that we know who it is. But at the time, yeah, it was like the biggest talking point of the pay-per-view until the main event. So yeah, absolutely great way to book the start of the show, as I've said. But the match itself really wasn't that good. But you know, I'd rather have an interesting angle rather than like an absolute classic match if the angle was done as well as this one was. Following that, we had the inaugural Trios Championship Tournament match where the Elite, so Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, defeated Hangman Adam Page and Dark Order's John Silver and Alex Reynolds. This was a brilliant match. I wish they had more matches like these nowadays. The Trios division seems to have been left by the wayside, especially now like the Ops and the Death Riders are feuding so much. You know, it kind of feels like they're an afterthought, even though they did kick off All In this year. Again, it just feels like there isn't as much concentration on the Trios division like there was when it first debuted. But yeah, no, this was a great match. Omega looked very good after his injury. And yeah, I kind of expected this to go well just because like these guys have great chemistry, especially after the all-timer feud that involved all six of these guys in 2021, especially Omega and Hangman. How Silver's... I seem to have lost myself on my notes. I do apologise. There was a sequence just for the finish that was really good. Silver and Reynolds combination, which ends in a German suplex into a pinning position, is brilliant to see every time. I love it every time we see it. It's so good. Like Silver, is the way that he kind of reversed the one-winged angel from Kenny Omega, I thought was really good. I thought it was 3 at one point, but obviously, you know, with how the thing worked out, we don't know if it ever would be 3. But the finish of Hangman taking out John Silver with a buckshot lariat, and then the Elite kind of taking advantage very quickly and very cleverly, like even in a disappointing way, but like not in a bad disappointing. It was like just because the Hangman and the Dark Order were such big baby faces at the time. Of course, it was disappointing to see them lose. But for them to immediately jump on Reynolds and Hangman to make sure that it was him that got the pin, and yeah, to see like Hangman consoling Silver afterwards, who probably has no idea what the hell just happened. Yeah, I just thought it was a really good way to finish the match. It made Hangman kind of seem guilty of kind of costing them the match, even though it wasn't his fault. And yeah, just everything about this worked really well. A very enjoyable trios match. And as I said, I wish that the trios division got as much love now as it did back then. Following that, we had Jade Cargill defeat Athena to retain the TBS Championship. And this was, like most Jade Cargill matches, a very short match, though it was very good for the most part. Cargill was carried through this one by Athena, but it's kind of what I expected. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because Athena was looking very strong in very much taking the fight to Jade Cargill, and Cargill looked dominant as she usually did in AEW in return to that. So it kind of worked out very well for the dynamic of the match. Athena started very well. She got an O-face in very quickly, which kind of threw Cargill for a loop for a little bit. She did a brutal drop kick to Layla Gray not through the barricade, but onto the barricade on the outside. And yeah, respect for Layla Gray for taking that bump. But yeah, no, Athena had good reversals to Jade Cargill's regular moves until she kind of started running into them, like as the match kind of got into its final sequence. But what's kind of weird is Jade Cargill looks like a better wrestler here than she has done through her whole WWE run. So I don't know what they're kind of doing differently with her in WWE. I felt like she should have been told to do whatever she was doing in AEW, doing WWE, but clearly that's not the case. But no, she'll probably get back to that point because she looked very good here. But yeah, it was a solid win for Jade. I think it made her 37-0 at that point, and I believe her whole record ran to 62-0. So it was a while ago as she's still TBS champion, but yeah, no, this was a solid match for Jade, a good way to introduce Athena, which gives her a loss, what makes her look very good. And obviously Athena has come on leaps and bounds since then, just in success with the ROH Women's Championship alone, as literally the other day she hit 1,000 days plus. So yeah, I feel like this was a really good match, good way to introduce Athena, and made Jade look very good in winning, I guess. After that, we had TNT champion Wardlow with FTR, who I believe were ROH Tag Team Champions and AAA World Tag Team Champions at the time. I don't know if they had all three. I'm not sure. I can't remember, honestly. But they faced Jay Lethal and the Motor City Machine Guns in what is very funnily a TNA versus AEW match, because at the time they had their partnership going on. Though I feel like it was very much near the end of their partnership, if it was. But yeah, it's funny because TNA are pretty much owned by WWE at this point now, so it's how weird this is. Not only now, but even then, it was very out of context. This is very random. But yeah, Wardlow he needs to get out of AEW essentially. I would say it's AEW's biggest fumble, just because he could have been one of the biggest homemade talents that could have gone and done a lot of stuff for multiple years, but unfortunately he has done barely anything other than, I believe he's a 3-time TNT champion, but all 3 runs weren't great. But yeah, he needs to get out of AEW at this point. Probably goes to WWE where he'll be treated a lot better. But the match was fine. I would have preferred just a straight up tag match between the Motor City Machine Guns and FTR, and then maybe given Wardlow a title defense instead. But yeah, it was one of the weaker matches on the card. I found it very hard to keep up with what was going on. What was it wasn't really sparking my interest. I found myself getting quite distracted during it. But yes, it was a fine match. It kind of wouldn't have gone on to maybe a special Dynamite, or at that point a special a special Rampage. But yeah, for a pay-per-view, it really didn't have any kind of good feel to it. It was just a bang average trios match, especially after the one we had earlier in the match. It was pretty crap. Following that, we had Powerhouse Hobbs defeat Ricky Starks, and this was an interesting one. It was very short. You'd thought that Ricky Starks would have won this one, as it was kind of a feud ender type match. But no, this was basically a squash match. Ricky did get some offense in, but it wasn't a lot. I just expected a lot more here. Hobbs looked very, very good coming out of this one. I think long term, this was a fine decision because all the stuff with Ricky Starks didn't work out. But yeah, this definitely hurt Ricky Starks as far as trying to get him momentum towards getting further up the card, which he simply did not ever do. I think the highest he got up the card was a feud to Jericho and the Tag Team Championships. But yeah, for Hobbs, this made him look great. He didn't quite take advantage of his momentum either. He won the TNT Championship, but he didn't have it for very long. But since then, he's become part of the Ops, which has been fine. They've been in the main event scene and he's challenged for the World Championship. But yeah, both these guys really had great potentials to go somewhere in AEW, and unfortunately, they haven't really done that much since. And obviously, Starks isn't in AEW anymore, he's in NXT. But yeah, it's a shame that nothing really came of this afterwards. And yeah, I think they had a rematch which was a lot better. But for a pay-per-view, especially the stature of All Out, I did expect a little bit more out of this one. Following that, we had Swerve in Our Glory, so Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee defeat to the Acclaimed, Matt Caster and Anthony Bowens with Billy Gunn, or Daddy Ass at that point, I think, to retain the World Tag Team Championships. And this was a decent match. It wasn't the best match on the card, it wasn't the worst either. It was more on the good side than the bad, but this match was more about the crowd than anything else. They more or less took over this one. I like the dynamic shift that they did through the match. So the Acclaimed were the heels going in, but they were wrestling like the baby faces because they were getting cheered a lot. And whereas Swerve in Our Glory were the baby faces going in, but were wrestling as heels, with Swerve Strickland especially wrestling well as a heel. Keith Lee, not as convincing, but you know, he's kind of such a likable guy that I would expect him to kind of wrestle as a heel anyway. It's kind of what ended up being the split of Swerve in Our Glories, because Swerve was being more of a heel where Keith wouldn't quite go as far as Swerve. But overall, I thought this was a really decent match. I really do miss watching Keith Lee wrestle, and I wish at some point he will come back, just because he's so good in ring. And like, I'm hoping that this illness hasn't taken as much toll on him as I'm probably thinking in my own head, because he was so athletic and like good at everything, even though he was a bigger guy. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that soon he'll be able to come back. For me, I'd probably say that Anthony Bowens was the MVP of this match. He took the brunt of the offense from Swerve in Our Glory. They also targeted his knee very well, but he overcame that a lot too. I think it was like a final sequence where Bowens was very close to getting two, and if it hadn't have been for Swerve, and then they did this like awful looking, I can't remember what they got. I'm trying to look at my notes. I think I put it down for what it was. I want to say it was some kind of muscle buster, but oh no, it was the Swerve stomp into like a powerbomb. It was done really, really well. Very much enjoyed it. Yeah, it didn't shock me that Acclaim didn't get the win. I believe, you know, as much as I'm going to try and avoid talking about the press conference of this event, I think it was in the press conference here where people were asking Swerve in Our Glory whether an audible should have been called for the Acclaim to win the belts, which makes no sense. Because why would you ask the team that they lost to whether they should have won? Like, that didn't make much sense to me, and I remember it being pretty much confirmed for, I believe it was Grand Slam after this, that Swerve and Our Glory were going to lose the belts to the Acclaimed. I feel like it kind of ruined that in a sense. So yeah, that wasn't great, but over there, words, Jesus Christ. Yeah, overall, this was a fine match. I said it was more about the crowd. The crowd really improved and made this kind of better than it actually was, I believe. But yeah, for me, I really would have preferred Swerve in Our Glory to have a longer run than they did, but everyone being behind the Acclaimed happened so kind of suddenly at that point that it was very clear that they were going to put the titles on them at some point. And yeah, I said overall, yeah, it was a fine match. I can't really think much else to say, to be honest. Following that, Tony Storm defeated Hikaru Shida, Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker to become the interim Women's World Champion. And yeah, this was really good. It was a lot better than I remember it being. This was action-packed throughout. Tony Storm was 100% the MVP of this one. She seemed to be involved in everything and spent arguably the longest time in the ring. Yeah, I liked how Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter stayed as a team throughout the whole match. It wasn't until kind of the final sequence where Baker kind of turned her back on Hayter a little bit, but it didn't play any kind of big impact in the match on whether those two were going to coexist or not. They just did, and they end up kind of getting outsmarted in a way because Tony Storm kind of played her cards tactically correct to then steal the win, pretty much. Hikaru Shida, she had an injury angle where she got hurt, went away and came back again. That was unnecessary as she didn't even play a part in the finish. So yeah, that wasn't massively needed. But personally, Storm, I don't think was the right winner here. I feel like Hayter was the right winner. They could have had a very long reign for Jamie Hayter here. Could have done the Britt Baker storyline, which felt inevitable at one point, which then ended up not being anything at all. Because, because Toni Storm has held it for ages, and Jamie Hayter hasn't really got her momentum back from that title win. So, yeah, I feel like here, putting Hayter as interim champion would have been the better option, and then making Toni Storm the champion after that would have been better. But, that's personal preference, and also hindsight being 2020, of course. But yeah, overall, really good match. Nothing really bad to say about this one here. Everything was great other than the Hikaru Shida thing. That was unnecessary, but it didn't take away from my opinion of the match at all. Also, Hikaru Shida didn't really play much of a part in this one. She was just there at times. But yeah, I think the wrong winner, but I understand why they did that. Like, put the title on Storm. After that, Christian Cage defeated Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, you son of a bitch. As JR would say. I remember I never saw this coming at all, but Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, got chokeslammed pretty much on the metal grate by Luchasaurus during his entrance, and it was a metal grate that fireworks were coming from, so the metal was really hot. His body was marked pretty badly from that bump, and yeah, it was silly to have him continue. Jungle Boy should have just said he didn't want to do it, because then it just would have been called off and that would have been it. But I suppose wrestlers are supposed to believe that wins and losses count, I guess. That would be my thing. But yeah, the match was a squash. It was just a moment of hope from Jungle Boy at one point, and then Christian speared him and that was it. But yeah, added to a great story. I don't know. I kind of wish this had gone on for maybe a little bit longer, just because it was so enjoyable at the time. I liked the whole Luchasaurus being a complete beast thing and helping Christian, but the whole Jungle Boy and stuff, I don't know, it worked really well. I really much enjoyed it. It really helped Christian establish himself as a heel, and Jungle Boy, was a very good, a very good babyface at the time, and really helped him establish himself as a single star, even though it would take for him to ironically turn heel for him to really come into his prime. And I do miss having Jack Perry around. I hope he comes back soon, to be fair. We also have to thank him for a lot of things over in WWE as well, AJ Lee. But yeah, it added to a great story. This, for me, even though his running WWE was great, his running TNA was great, this for me was when Prime Christian started. The whole father gimmick was absolutely fantastic, and yeah, I can't say enough good about that gimmick and just this whole feud between Christian and Jungle Boy as a whole. After that, we had Chris Jericho defeat Bryan Danielson in what was a fantastic match. It was paced so well. This is two of the greatest of all time, so you kind of expect it to be a very good match. I would probably say it was very close second for match of the night. I know that seems criminal, but honestly, the Eddie Kingston versus Tomohiro Ishii match on the pre-show was awesome. I really liked that match a lot, and it's actually my preferred match on this card, which is very weird to say that a pre-show match is match of the night, but I think it is. It's the one I genuinely prefer more. But yeah, this was very good. It was kind of a wrestlers wrestling match. Both of them worked very, very well. Obviously, we know that these two are just absolutely astounding in the ring, so we knew it was going to be good. Both were doing great transitional wrestlings throughout, as well as good transitional wrestling into submissions as well, with both of them going for not only their regular submissions, so the Rebel Lock for Danielson and the Walls of Jericho for Jericho, obviously, but also submissions that we don't normally see them do as well. Jericho was in the Rebel Lock for a while, and he turned it into the Walls of Jericho very well at one part in the match. But yeah, it was a great finish. It was very Chris Jericho cheating kind of finish, but it made sense in a lot of ways. I would have liked to have seen a rematch between these two on pay-per-view, which I don't believe they did, but they might have had a rematch on regular television. I just can't remember. But yeah, everything about this match worked really, really well. It was an absolutely fantastic match. Just a very close second, in my opinion, but yeah, I said, absolutely fantastic match. If you haven't watched it, definitely, out of everything on this pay-per-view, definitely check this match out. Following that, we had Darby Allin, Sting, and Miro defeat the House of Blacks, Malachi Black, Brody King, and Buddy Matthews. Yeah, this match was fine. Nothing really that special about it. House of Black have had much, much better trios matches. It was the completely wrong winners, in my opinion. But, Sting, I guess, it's just ridiculous. But the dynamic was kind of off. The face team kind of wasn't working together at all, which I get is by design, but also for Miro to be taunting Sting and Darby just looked really silly, in my opinion. Darby looked Darby took an absolute beating throughout this one, but of course he did. It's Darby Allin. He was the one that was kind of split away from his team for the longest time. Sting didn't do that much, but it's fine. I'm kind of glad that they kind of had... I like the fact that he threw, I believe it was Buddy, across the ring to make Malachi tag in. But the finish was fine. Having Buddy take out Miro kind of makes sense, and then we had Sting use the mist kind of against Malachi Black, but the roll-up really wasn't great. You know, to have the last move of the match be somebody spitting mist is pretty crap at the most of the times, but to have it come at the expense of a roll-up as well, you know, Sting could have at least done the what's it called now? The Scorpion Death Drop. He could have done that straight afterwards and then gone for the pin. It would have kind of made a bit more sense. But yeah, unfortunately, more complaints than positives for this one. Very random match, and the House of Black definitely were too good to be lowered down to this point. Yeah, very disappointed with the match quality as well. And as said, the complete wrong winners here to say that the House of Black within probably say within 6 months were trios champions as well. You know, it just wasn't very good for this one, in my opinion. But, you know, it is what it is. And finally, in the main event, we had CM Punk defeat Jon Moxley to become the AEW World Champion. And obviously, there's a lot of controversy following this match. And I'm going to try and avoid it and just talk about the match itself. But on paper, this should have been an absolutely fantastic match. However, yeah, it simply just wasn't. Punk and AEW just couldn't put on a great match apart from the one with MJF at Revolution in the dog collar match. But yeah, this wasn't it. It was kind of disappointing, but the Hangman match also was disappointing, and I watched that a few months ago. Go check that review out, by the way. The Double or Nothing 2022 has been covered already on the channel. So yeah, I was kind of expecting it to be not great, but you know, it's Jon Moxley and he's like Mr. Reliable for AEW, so I assumed this was going to be a lot better, but it simply wasn't the case. I found it kind of funny that Punk mocked Moxley for bleeding all the time during their pay-per-view, during their promos into the pay-per-view, and then Punk got split open very early into this match. But yeah, Moxley controlled the match for the majority, maybe 60 to 70% of the match was all Moxley. But the final sequence and the finish with Moxley landing on Punk's back, and then, you know what I mean? It's the same finish they did on, ironically, Clash in Paris that we've just had, and at the Netflix debut with Rollins, where he hits the GTS, he goes onto the ropes, he falls back onto Punk, he hits another GTS, and then that's it. Yeah, I find it kind of ironic now, but obviously at the time it was a pretty decent finish, I suppose. But yeah, it just wasn't a very good match. And then afterwards we had the whole reveal and return of MJF, which was done absolutely brilliantly. It's almost saved the pay-per-view if it hadn't have been for Punk going on a tyrant afterwards. But yeah, from the phone recording to the scarf reveal to him coming out, for him obviously wanting the World Championship, everything about MJF's return worked here very well. I remember at the time being very excited to see MJF and CM Punk feuding again. Obviously that wouldn't be the case, and a lot of backlash will come from what happened afterwards at the press conference, which, as I said, I'm not going to go into. But yeah, I said overall the match was pretty mediocre. I expected a lot more out of these two, but it simply wasn't the case. And yeah, obviously this match is kind of something we don't really talk about much anymore. So those are my thoughts on AEW All Out 2022. Do put down in the comments below what you thought of the show, what stood out to you other than the press conference. We all know about what happened there. We don't need to go over that again. It's been 3 years at this point. Let's just kind of let it go to a degree. But yeah, other than that, do put down in the comments what you thought your favourite match was, what you thought could have been done better, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, thank you for tuning into this latest episode of Main Event Memories. I know there's been a lot of these recently with doing Unforgiven 2006, NXT TakeOver 25 and WWE SummerSlam 2021, but it might be a while before I do another one because there's obviously WrestlePalooza and All Out 2025 coming up. There's also Victory Road and No Mercy as well, NXT No Mercy. So yeah, it might be a while, so do put in the comments below some other pay-per-views that you would like me to go back and watch and review. They're much appreciated. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, give it a like. If you're enjoying this series of videos, do put down in the comments, let me know. And as I said, any suggestions as well, do put down there. I will try and get them watched and reviewed within a decent amount of time. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.